he's older than me. He got a lot more wisdom than I do. And I felt like it's about time for me to get somebody to really kind of give me a little bit of game, tell me how it works. And Mike was basically just telling me his life story about basketball, about how we went from point A to point B, and how Mike has experienced a lot of things. And I feel like it's only right that I have him on the podcast and have him tell me about himself. But tell them the story that you was telling me just now.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for being here.
Of course.
I had to say it was a surprise when we actually got in touch with each other. We actually remember the first time we met. Mm-hmm. We were playing the BCU tournament.
Yeah.
Who is this guy? This guy is wild. He's full of energy, but I like him. He reminds me of New York so much. And then when you text me, I looked, I said, 914.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm home. I like this.
It's that 914 number for real.
You don't see that everywhere, man.
You don't see that over there.
Yeah, man, definitely a pleasure. I felt that what you're doing is definitely something that is going to blow. And once I've been seeing you around, I've been following you on Instagram. I said, let me reach out to this guy and definitely try to be a part of this some way. So definitely thank you for having me on here.
I appreciate you coming, man. I don't like to have everybody on here. Like, I've told some people no, I've told some people yes, but you're one of those people where I was like, you know what? I have to have this guy on, because even at the BCU tournament, you was talking, you was like, you seem like a type of person who has something to say, feel me? So I was like, let me have him on here and let him tell me where he's from and stuff. You told me you was from Greenberg.
Yeah.
I was like, that's right, like that's right in my area. Like, that's crazy.
That's 287 exit 4 right there.
See?
And how small of a world it is, because as you say, I had something to say, and for the longest time growing up, a lot of people didn't want to hear what I had to say. Yeah. I lost a lot of friends because I speak too much. Sometimes my mouth can get me in a little bit of trouble. I've dropped a couple bombs here and there where I still kind of regret it to this day. But I've come out on the good end. And God has definitely been my savior, first and foremost.
Okay.
I definitely have to say thank you to my family, because without them, I wouldn't be here. Growing up, I had my grandmother, my mom, my 2 aunts. So it was a lot of females. So when people around me, they either get the sense of he really cares, or, he's a little bit of and I won't say the word. Yeah. But I'm emotional at times because I know the potential that people can possess. I also want to be a part of other people's stories as best as I can. Yeah. Not to say that I'm the author, but be some person that they look at and they say, okay, this is a good guy. Yeah. Maybe I can learn something from him. So more than just actions, because I feel some people, when they do things with actions, they're a little standoffish, but also giving them a couple words of encouragement. As we as men, we struggle with being able to express ourselves and just say something as simple as, I love you. Yeah. That's looked at as, whoa, don't touch me. That's a little too much. You're becoming feminine, and it's also in our community, because when you look at it, our black men, our black women, we don't say how much we're valued. Yeah. So when you see that woman who has, as I like to say, daddy issues, and she ends up being out in the streets, it's because she's been going through it so much, and her mom is holding on to this baggage of not having her husband around. She's not told that she's loved. Yeah. And vice versa. There's plenty of men and women that can just use a hug and just being told, you're worth something. Now, I hate to make it sound like, well, it's just in our community. Yeah. But at the same time, being a small minority, when you look around, there are other cultures that are, I don't want to say more advanced, but they know where they're going. So you take an Asian community. Their lineage is very important to them. Making sure that they make their parents proud is very important. And their life path is already determined for them before they even become of age. So if their dad is a doctor, most likely they'll be a doctor. And if not, in some cases, and I can't speak for all, but some of them are shamed, and then it becomes this whole, taboo, this guy wants to be a dancer or whatever the case may be. Whereas us, what's the first thing that we do?
Basketball, rapping.
Any major sport.
Yeah.
I want to be on stage in front of a camera to be able to perform, and that big thing of, I want to make it so that I can look in the camera and tell all the haters that I'm here. that's such a struggle because what happens when you don't?
And there's so many people trying to do that same thing. And I feel like, not everybody could be LeBron James, feel me? But you can go to school and you can be something, you know? There is no way you go to school and you get nothing from it, feel me? Mm-hmm. So I feel like a lot of people don't take advantage of the fact that we can literally take advantage of the system that we're in if we have an education system, meaning like capitalism. We can take advantage of it if we have an education. Like, for instance, what example was I gonna give? Like, if 1 million people play basketball, like 10 of them make it. You know what I mean?
It's less than 1% of the world that makes it into the NBA. And when you look at anything, when you look at Fortune 500 companies, any sports, you usually hear about lineage. So at this point, you're talking, even I'm a big WWE fan. So I look at a guy like The Rock, Randy Orton. Those guys are third generation superstars.
Yeah.
And then following that, you look at the Usos, Samoa Joe, Rikishi. All those guys are coming from that family line that started with the beginning. So where do we find our beginning? That's where you say, you get together a group of people. You say, this guy's going to be a doctor. This one's going to be a lawyer. Maybe this one will be a farmer. Another one might be a coach. And you get everyone that's in their specific field and you build from that. Originally, that was kind of the purpose of gangs. It was never the purpose of let's arm ourselves with guns and shoot people, but we want to keep the chaos out of our neighborhood, starting in the projects. And then you get crack cocaine, you get heroin, and all these other drugs that then becomes a turf war between all of us. Where did these drugs come from? You can do your research and you can see somehow, shape or form, it's come from some entity of government to break down our communities. And we're so caught up on, especially in New York, and you know how it is where we come from, where I want to be better than you, and in order to do that, I have to assassinate you.
Yeah.
Not necessarily kill you, but kill your character and make you less credible. And I saw a picture the other day that bugged me out. It was kind of like a pyramid where you have one guy who is climbing up, and at the same time, you have someone that's grabbing on their foot. All right, that was a representation of New York rap. Then you have Atlanta, where everybody was linked up in arms. So then when you listen to the music, I still listen to Hot 97 on streams, Power 105, and you're hearing the music that we hear down here. So there's really no difference. So when I go home, people ask me, well, what do you listen to? I'm listening to the same thing that you guys are listening to.
Right.
Black Panther album is out now.
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar did a fabulous job with that. You got Yo Gotti. Drake is coming back on the scene, as well as Nicki Minaj, Remy Ma, who's down in North Carolina now.
Remy Ma?
Oh. So you have, I don't want to say the emergence of different kind of music, because we've had that since 2000. We had No Limit, we had Cash Money. So you have that different taste of music to the point where now guys who made fun of T-Pain and Kanye West for what they did, everybody's doing it. Yeah. Even guys that I know that I've either taught or coached, they're having the same kind of sound that you would hear from the industry, and there's no distinguishing who's who. And then I don't want anybody to take that as a diss, because everybody's going to find their way to make it. However you're going to do it, whether it's music, whether it's sports, whether it's being a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, whatever. But you find your way to get on the way that everyone else is, not just to blend in, but then you find your space to stick out once you've mastered your craft. So I know before we were talking about life story, and I have to headline that God saved my life. Because honestly, without him, I don't know where I'd be. Most likely probably would be in a gang, somewhere inside the street, working some dead-end job. And because of how my grandmother and my mom and everyone was around me, it takes a village to raise, my grandmother would talk to me like I was an equal. She would literally have these in-depth conversations with me from when I was about 6 years old. We would talk about what's going on in the world. And I knew at that age, watching the news for me, I didn't like. Because you're always hearing someone got shot, someone died. Oil, gas, NASDAQ, Dow Jones, all those common things you'll find in the Wall Street Journal to, what's our paper?
New York Times.
New York Times, but there's another one that's local for us.
Local?
Something Journal.
Oh, is it the one they be like just throwing on your lawn? They got a lot of coupons and stuff in there.
Yes, and then the one that we had for Westchester, which had all of our sports everywhere from where you were in Mount Vernon to going up to Brewster. So you can find your local heroes, whatever was going on in your neighborhood, and we had those. And I used to tell her, well, how come you don't hear about Jimmy across the street who just got straight A's, or that guy that ran for school president, the guy that got a full scholarship to go to an Ivy League school? You don't really hear much about those things, and it's sad because there's always has to be
Something
negative connotation to someone's story. So I recently was listening to this story about these two guys. One didn't have any legs, and he was actually in Cleveland, Ohio. He lost his legs at 11 years old. He slipped underneath a train that was running, and so his friend would carry him, and they were wrestlers. The other one couldn't see past 5 feet. So the phrase "a blind leading the blind," but both of them ended up winning medals, I believe, and they graduated high school. So with the guy that had no legs, he got fitted for legs to be able to walk across the stage.
Okay.
And it was one of those stories I was like, wow, that's great. But what about that guy that never had any issues?
Right?
When did we hear about, and I don't want to just say Barack Obama, but you never hear about this guy that never had anything going wrong. So the media, and it's not just with us, but the media has a way of painting how we view the world. So me being a tall black gentleman, most people won't know, I go into a random neighborhood and the first thing they think is, oh, well, depending on what you dress. If I go like this, I'm good.
Yeah.
If I went in a hoodie and some sweatpants, it might be a question. And my goal in life was always to break the chain and break the cycle. I didn't want to be the guy that played sports but was a dumb jock, because there's more to me than that. Sit down and have a conversation with me. So when I was having these conversations with my grandmother, she knew that I was on to something, and she wanted to make sure that before she passed, number one, she saw me graduate high school, and number two, that she might have an opportunity to see her great-grands, which unfortunately she didn't. And when she passed, it was very difficult for me. I went through a tough time after graduating high school and college. I ended up winning a state championship in high school, and that was one of the moments that wasn't for me, it was for her. I ran up in Glens Falls to the top of the stadium. I hugged her. And to me, that's still one of the moments that I've had the pleasure of sharing with her. And there's not a lot of memories that stand up.
That just like replays in your mind over and over, right?
Even when she didn't have her memory, she would always say my name. Where's Michael? Where's Michael? And whenever I saw her, she'd remember Glens Falls? And it would always bring a tear to my eye, because I knew that was the memory that would stand out above anything. So you can imagine the kind of impact she had on my life. Going through college, it was difficult because I'm figuring out, do I want to play? Do I want to teach? Do I want to coach? I fell in love, and it was something that it meant a lot to me. The woman that I was with, we went through a lot. I hurt her. I ended up hurting myself because I had a lot of things that were going on with me. My parents had divorced, domestic violence, and unfortunately, I went on this path of not really getting too close to people. And then when I did, I ended up hurting them. And it took me up until I was about 28, 29 years old to be able to sit down and have those conversations with my mom and my dad. And that's when I realized, you know what, not only is it time to grow, but it's really time to just forgive yourself. During that time, I wasn't going to church, where I had grown up in the church up until I was 17, 18 years old. And I figured it was time to go back. I didn't go back until about, I want to say, a year ago, when I was dating my wife. And it didn't hit me until we were going to have my son, who was going to be a year very soon, that there has to be a change. I was a guy that I valued the look over the grind. So people who might see me around campus, they say, oh, well, you know, he's very well put together. That's something that I did years ago, where it was getting the new sneaker. As everybody in New York, you know, when a sneaker comes out, there's going to be a line. I will put my order ahead of time. I don't want to wait online. Get these these jeans, this shirt, this whatever, drive this kind of car, obsessed with BMWs. And that was the kind of guy that I was. And it took me losing that and knowing that I have a life coming in. Well, you can't continue to be this guy.
So do you think that fatherhood changed you for like a positive way, you're saying? Because I don't know what it's like to be a father as like, I mean, I'm young. So I don't know what it's like to be a father. But everyone says once you hold your child, like your mentality just switches in terms of your value system, how you view love, things like that.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
I want to say that before I had my child, that I was thinking different. I was already in a different wavelength where some people didn't understand the things that I was doing, why I would get upset about things in the world, and was almost taught to accept things the way they are. When I said, no, see, that's a problem. We can do so much. We can change so much. And I couldn't get with, let me just stick with the system. Now, when she told me she was pregnant, we were just dating at the time. And I'm just like, man, what am I going to do? Here I am. I'm set to make double of what I was making the previous year. And I have this great opportunity. I might end up being a JV coach. It ended up not happening, but I'm still thinking about the money, how I can live. You know, my mom can help me out. Her mom can help me out. We have so much family in New York, and here she was down in school. And I said, you know what? I've always wanted to go down south, possibly start my own business. Let me take a chance on that. So I'll go back to church. P.S. By the way, here's a spoiler for some people that don't know. I grew up Baptist.
Oh,
a lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
And it was one of those things that I didn't really discuss because when I was first introduced to Seventh-day Adventism, it was that, well, you're Christian, but you're not really Christian. Like, we're really Christian because we celebrate on the seventh day, and then, you know, some of us were vegetarians. So that was my experience, and I wanted to know more about it. And I'll get into that later on, but in having my child, I just really decided to go back to church, rededicate my life, and I started hearing this message of being your own man, standing out. And the message that I heard was my pastor's brother, who had the opportunity to stay, but he left. And now he's running a church in the Midwest, and he says he loves it. He's in a town that nobody really knows, somewhere in, I believe it was Indiana, so I'll take the Midwest thing back. But he said that it was a joy for him because he got to stand up and be a leader. And the work that he's doing in his community is so good. And then I started hearing another message of that same sort, and another, and another. And the more that I started hearing that, the more I was drawn away from the things that I was so comfortable in. And the only thing I can remember was my wife saying, well, you know, you're so comfortable where you are. Everything is just good for you. It's easy. What's wrong with having a challenge?
That's true.
And that was the thing that right there I said, you know what? I think I should start packing my bags. Now, God has always shown me when there is resistance, that's usually your best chance for success. A lot of people, and you can read the stories in the Bible, a lot of stories will show you that those that were successful had a lot of resistance. So I said, let me take this chance. God has never failed me. And when I did, I came down here very skeptical. And of course, my mom was like, you know what? I'm coming with you. You coming where? To
Chattanooga.
What? I've never heard of it.
Tennessee.
I said, well, Mom, it can't be that bad. I mean, Chattanooga, they just moved up in the murder rate over the last couple of years. So it's not bad. You know, I'm getting out of Brownsville, so you should be happy. And she's like, you know what? I get you, but still, I want to come down. She came down. She saw how nice it was, and it was good. So, you know, her accepting it was probably one of the easiest things, at least for me. And then the thing that changed me when I came down here, I'm walking with my wife. My son was 3 months at the time. And all of a sudden, honk, honk, cars passing by, and people are waving out the window. I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe that's just them being nice.
Yeah.
And then another car. And then another car. And I started thinking, I had to take myself back. And I said, well, what would cause people to do something like that? What are we known for in our community?
I mean, I know as far as New York, people don't do that type of stuff at all.
Not only that, but the family dynamic.
Okay.
How many times is it promoted that, or that we see in certain areas where the father is not necessarily, whether it's not involved or not with the mother.
Mm-hmm.
So some excuses are, well, I would have been around more, but because of your mother. And then the effort stops there. I think more in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been more of an effort. So you're seeing more of the Cosby Show appear.
Yeah,
I know that era.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have Blackish now.
Yeah.
But that era of when you talk about Family Matters, In the House, and we can go down all those shows that came out in the 90s, they were all Fresh Prince. All around that family atmosphere. And then when those shows died, it kind of reminded me of reading about civil rights, where you see Malcolm and Martin,
Mm-hmm.
Rosa Parks, and you hear about these people that are resisting what they know and they feel that isn't right, and all those shows disappear.
And they trying to, and they're just not try to. How do you feel about that Bill Cosby situation? What is your take on that? I'm really curious, because it's like, on one hand, you want to say, oh, they're just trying to destroy a black man who was trying to buy NBC, and he was going to do all these great things. He was like an icon in the black community. But then on the other hand, you hear these women's stories and you don't want to discredit them. So it's like, where'd you land on that?
It's a fine line.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I see it is, that's funny, I was just talking to my wife about this.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a statute of limitations.
Yeah.
If you're going back 30 years to something where, and don't get me wrong, I don't condone drugging women.
Of course not.
To make sexual advances. I don't
Yeah.
at all. You know, I'd be the first one to tell you, if you put your hands on a woman, I'll be the first one at your doorstep trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And probably be less words.
Mm-hmm.
But still, there's got to be a statute of limitations, because if you can come out of the woodwork, you figure what Bill Cosby was.
He's like 80, right?
Right. And when he did that show, he was probably in his 50s.
Yeah, he was old.
And those allegations came out maybe somewhere either in between or before the Cosby Show, when he was just a comedian. So, I think that's more of,
I feel like it's on a
because
spiteful.
he was trying to do all these things. He's supposed to partner with Oprah. Can you imagine him and Oprah having a multimedia company that is bigger than NBC, Fox, ABC, and then you have Black Panther going on all the time. You
Right.
have somebody had mentioned Moonlight, or you have all those shows that we used to watch growing up, kind of what BET was supposed to be when it first came out, and then it became a little more commercialized, realizing that they're going to get, it's more about the stats. And unfortunately, you got to make money, so you can't fault that. At the same time, there's a fine line to how do you do things where you're making money, but then you can also uplift the company. I also say for us, we shouldn't have to wait for something like a Black Panther to happen.
Yeah.
I think that, and at least in my efforts, I'm trying to get involved in my community as much as possible. So when I heard, for example, the racist post, I was talking to my teammate David Reynolds and said, send it to me. I put it on Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. I ended up taking it down because there was a negative feeling behind it, and I don't want that to resonate with me or anybody that might look up to me, to look at it and say, all right, well, we got to go out black fist up. Let's strap up like how they portrayed the Black Panthers. And no, it's got to be more of the reason why we're doing things is not only to create awareness, but that we are better, that we do become better. Our goal, especially for me as a father, I have a son with a daughter on the way. I want my children to be better than what I was, to not go through that time of that self-hatred or hating others, and then you're damaging the most important years of your life, and then you're in your 20s or the end of your 20s and your 30s, and you're just now getting to your career.
For those who don't know about what Mike is talking about, he's talking about BCU night. Somebody posted on Snapchat, right?
Yeah.
On Snapchat, they posted Happy Nigger Day. And that is like a consistent theme that's been happening every BCU night. There always is some type of racial thing that happens. And that's what Mike is referring to. Basically, every single BCU night, there's always a racial remark made in terms of the night. At one point, they were like, oh, these monkeys need to sit down. Or like, there's just always different types of stuff going on in terms of that. So Mike posted on Instagram, and you said that you What was the exact post? I don't want to quote you wrong.
Well, the exact post was just basically saying that this is very upsetting that there's racism that still goes on in the world, where especially now that we've had a black president, we've had different kinds of diversity, where we're on the verge of having our first woman president. There are more, unfortunately, there are more women that are educated than men, especially in the black community. And I think that it's time to change the whole narrative.
And you also said something about your son, right? Like how you almost don't feel comfortable raising your son in an environment like that.
And I'll be the first one to say I felt really bad, because the first thing that I thought was, this must have been a white person. I've experienced where there's been some kind of racism from white people, from Spanish people, and it basically goes all the way around. So I remember one night there was a player of mine that we were coaching, a couple of guys that I've known for a while, and he had his dealer's license, and we were being followed by a Queens cop. Now all of us in the car are black, and cop pulls us over and says that the guy couldn't drive or whatever the case may be, and then said that the car smelled like marijuana. Now let's think about this logically. As an adult, for a kid that I've coached, he was 17 at the time. I've coached this kid literally since he was in 6th grade. Why would I ever have drugs around him, even if that's something that I did? Why would any of us as adults coach this kid and be condoning having drugs or alcohol and telling him this is the way that you should live, given that we've probably made those mistakes, if not made worse mistakes? So it upset me to see that. That was number one. Secondly, with this post, when I ended up finding out kind of the background of the person, I thought of racism all around. You can't call a Dominican a Puerto Rican. You can't tell a Dominican they're black, even though they share the same island with Haiti. You can't call a Haitian a Jamaican. You can't call a Jamaican a Trinidadian. You can't call a regular white person a Jew. You can't call... and then you can't call any of the Spanish people Mexican. That's like the worst. You can't call a Chinese a Japanese, but then don't call them Filipino. So with all that being said, I know no, we sit and we laugh, but it's to know that there's still racism, but because we as black people, we hold on to it so much, that 400 years of slavery and how we were taken from our own land. But then go back in history, you see that we had our own people in slavery. You know, white people, they had their own people in slavery. And it just goes down the line where it's painted more in third world countries. Like, look at these guys, they're working in sweatshops. Oh, well, they don't really have a place to live. So that's why they come and they live in the United States, so that they're able to make the money that they would never make in their countries, send it back, and then be good. And yet, for some reason, with our community, we're the only ones that haven't figured out a way to not only make it for ourselves, where it's not go big or go home, but then a way to not only just support our families, but then to support our neighborhood. So it's sad when most people are thinking that Jay-Z lyric in 444, where he was talking about the whole missing out on Dumbo and get drug money to buy the neighborhood, even though for some people that might be their only way out. What else can you do? If you're good with math and you're a great basketball player, but you may not make it to the NBA, why wouldn't you think about being a statistician? Yeah. Those guys are getting paid at the table, and they still get to be around their same favorite players. You're a guy that likes to be in shape. So why not go to school for, let's say, physical therapy or to be a personal trainer, and then you can do player development for any of these NBA teams. There's opportunities for you. You just have to know how to look, and it all starts with that education. When you don't have it, then you're stuck in this, well, I don't know what to do. And this world, the way it is, especially here in the United States, we're spoon-fed answers. So now when you don't have the answers anymore, as you become an adult and you get into adulthood, you start looking around saying, well, I don't know what I'm going to do.
And a lot of people, they don't even look at college as an option. I know, at least where we come from, right? There's definitely a lot of people who just don't, it's like a completely different mindset than somebody like me or you have had, right? When I was growing up, my uncle always told me that what are you doing? My uncle always told me, growing up in church, you just have a different mindset than a lot of people, right? Like, and especially growing up in church and having parents who are also educated, maybe not, like, we weren't rich or anything, but they were educated and they got their education. Like, I look at education as a must. You know what I mean? And my parents didn't make it an option. It wasn't like, if you want to go to school, you can go to school. It was just like, you're going to school and that's it. You know,
Right.
It wasn't like, oh yeah, you can stay out until 4:00 in the morning, even though you're 16 years old. Feel me? Like, if I did stay up out at those times, I had to sneak out. I had to go around my parents. These aren't good things, you know. And the value system of having parents who made sure, also my parents were older, so they understood life in a different way. Like, a lot of people aren't blessed to have that. You know, you're educated, your wife is educated, so your son is it goes back to the lineage thing. So your son is most likely going to be educated, and your daughter's going to most likely be educated. Feel me? Because you're going to instill those values. One of the things we need to do as a community and as a nation is make sure that everybody understands the importance of education, and that anybody can get it, and that anybody can achieve anything.
Especially now, you look at the laws that have been passed. You can go to any state school and get your education for free, and I believe
In New York, yeah.
your family has to make under, I think it's 100,000. So, if I'm a student in Tennessee, guess what? If I don't make it to be a scholarship player, I think TSU, why not? You know, go to one of those state schools. Even if you think, let me start at Chat State. I don't know much about the neighborhood, the area, but one thing that I do know is I know how to find where I can get my education.
Yeah.
So if I'm one of these kids that's graduating now, I'm going to one of these state schools, and I'm graduating from there because it's going to be free. And then as long as I live, or rather work in my field for 4 years, guess what? I'm graduating at 22, and from 22 to 26, I'll live with my parents, and then that's an average of $200,000 that I will not have to repay in debt because the state is paying for it.
Yeah.
Not to mention, let's just say you're the scholarship athlete. You get that on top of the state funding, so you're still not paying. You probably get some money back. And if people are really smart, you apply for every scholarship that you can find under the sun. The 500, the 100, the 250, because when that goes to school, it comes back to you as a reimbursement.
Yeah.
So that whole idea of now you have money to start with in your savings, and then you get a work study job, even if it's something you sit at the library for 3 hours doing absolutely nothing. That's money that you can take that and you want to spend a little, put some in the bank. Spend a little, put something in the bank. And if I can go back now to the amount of money that I've blown through,
Yeah, of course.
I kid you not, I probably would have stayed home until I was 26 and had that money in my pocket to go do whatever. My credit is good. That's another thing that sometimes we don't educate our children on because we're somewhat lacking in that area where we're going through it as a process. But we're at that generation now where we've seen our parents go through it. We've seen our grandparents go through it. My grandmother worked 3 jobs, and I was with her from when she worked 2. She was a nurse practitioner and at Phelps actually, and then she owned her own nursing home. So to be able to do that, I mean, we're talking about a black woman in America, straight from Kingston, Jamaica, in her 60s, mind you, and she started before that working 3 jobs and taking care of her parents. So I'm looking and saying, if my grandmother can do that, what's my excuse why I can't just get this paper done before Sunday when it's
right?
You know, why am I complaining when all I have to do is I'm working downtown with some special ed kids, and maybe it might not be my first love, but understanding that there's still a need because special ed is so undermanned and underpowered. There's so many kids that are going into it because of the fact that something simple, they can't read. Now we're trying to reverse what's lacking at home. And sometimes I come home and I speak to my wife and say, no, it really hurts to know that there are parents, there are a society of children that may not know their full potential because they're not taught that.
Exactly.
So that's the next generation of those kids that are growing up and idolizing those guys that we listen to on the radio, that we see on TV, and having no idea what goes into it. So yes, education is very important.
Very.
And I wanted to make sure that, especially with getting on here, that the community not just knows who I am, because there's a huge backstory, and anybody, whoever wants to run into me on campus, it's no problem. We can talk, and I can tell you my life story and tell you so many things that I've learned, but I don't want people to get this negative connotation and say, well, I only know him from being in the gym because he's just very, he's very boisterous. He's very dominating, and sometimes even people can look at me and they say he's intimidating. But I'm one of the nicest people that you can never sit down and have a conversation with. Mm-hmm. My whole goal is, it's never about trying to be better than anyone. It's always been about me being the best version of me that I can be. And when I can achieve that, that's when I can pass it down to my children. That's when I can be a better father. I can be a better husband. I can be a better son. So going back to the racial comment, it was right in time for intramural playoffs.
Yeah, I was just about to go there.
Mm-hmm. And I remembered it like it was yesterday, because the first thing I thought about was, if you remember when we played in the BCU tournament, I remember one of the comments that was made was, well, we won because one of our boys was reffing. And then I also heard another comment that was saying that I'm 40, and for the record, I'm 31. Okay, I don't want anybody to try and add years on. I know I'm old enough. But then I would go back and I'd say, well, if I'm 31 and I know some of you guys are a lot younger than me, whether it's 25 and under, what would then be your excuse why you can't perform at such a high level? Mm-hmm. When I tell you that it's not about me, at the end of the game, I gave the MVP ball to LJ, mm-hmm. because it's not about me winning championships. It's not about me to try and prove that I'm better than anybody. And I can have a conversation with anybody and pick apart your game and your character. I know what kind of person I'm playing with on the court. The same way I know what kind of person that I'm teaching with in the classroom, or the kind of student that I'm dealing with, because you're taught that when you're young. You're taught to know the good people from the bad. You're taught to know the people that are going to waste your time to the people that are going to add value to your life. So here I am, I'm trying to influence guys to be better. And as time was going on, I'm telling LJ, hey, look, I need you to be more aggressive. I need you to be more demanding. I need you to be more aggressive. And he responded in such a positive way. I just remember looking at him and saying, man, if I had somebody that was doing that, and I went through the era of coaches where I had to be yelled at. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing that turned switch on just like that. And I was super aggressive. So I originally didn't even want to play in intramurals at first. I'm just like, I'm good with playing pickup. And then when I saw the group of guys I was playing with, Owen, David Runnels, David Bijou, with Ev being our coach, even though he was injured. Brandon at the time was going to play with us. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. Hillis. Durbin. Originally, Gabe was supposed to play with us, and then he went and played with another team. So the way that I met guys, it was just really through basketball, and that's how I've always met guys. I really just wanted it to be something where I'm getting exercise, but it's really about being part of a community. Mm-hmm. Something that I was drawn back from for a while, and then being a father made me want to reinvest that energy into young people. And when I did, then this happened, and I doubted myself. Rewind when we first played Shaq Fu. Yeah, I was really becoming into my own. I was shaking off the rust, and I started feeling like I was back in New York.
That's Jonathan McClure's team, episode 3, by the way. He was on episode 3.
I was here and there. I was saying a couple things, and I regret it because I allowed people to get to me, and that's not something that's supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. It ended up being probably one of my best games that I played that season. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it was my worst, and I'll tell you why. Going into the gym, I'm with my son. I wheel out my son as usual. My wife usually comes, but she's at the library. I had walked with my son, and we're going into the gym. I'm looking around, and my whole day was thinking about that game. I had my tights on. I had my everything that I wore underneath my shorts and my jersey. I had on all day thinking about, oh man, I can't wait to do this. I'm going to do that. And I get to the game. My wife wasn't there yet. So I have a decision to make. Do I leave my son on the side with people that I kind of know. The majority of them that I do know, and I know no one's going to run off with my son, even though Tennessee, it has a high rate of child kidnapping.
Really?
As a matter of fact, I believe it's either from Kentucky or West Virginia. There is a child trafficking and it's child trafficking and what do you call it? I don't want to say like Black Wall Street, but like taking organs, selling organs.
What?
And it goes through Chattanooga. I just found this out a few weeks ago.
I didn't know that either.
So at the time, my first instinct was, well, I'm a basketball player. I know all these guys. They're all the guys, and there was a couple girls. One girl asked me if she can hold my son. I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. And I go to warm up. As the game starts, here's my wife that comes in. I hear her. She has a very distinct walk, even though she wore sneakers. I know that she's in. And I remember I'm on defense. I went to go take the ball out, and she just gave me that look like she was just very disappointed. And even though we won that game, we talked about it, and I just felt really bad to the point where I didn't want to play anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I went and had a conversation with the guys. I think it was like 2 days later. And I was like, man, look, I can't play. When I have to decide between basketball and family and I choose basketball, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, again, most people know me and they know not to try me. Not because I'm this intimidating guy, but because I show nothing but respect to everyone. And it took that conversation, that moment, to really think, like, what was your purpose of being here? Is it to show up these guys on the basketball court, or was it to come down and be a better family man, to be a better husband, to be a better father? And I talked to all of them out of all sincerity and said, well, if this is what we're going to do, where we're talking trash to our opponents, where we're basically making them feel less than, then how good of Christians are we? And guys were at first really quiet. And then I started pointing out things about everybody, including myself. And that's when I said, we have to figure this out. And if we can't change, I'm not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
That game, the one game that we lost, was the one that I did not show up to. And I had a conversation with them that night. And from then on, I just played different.
Mm-hmm.
I figured out ways to tell LJ, listen, I need you to do this. Mark Durbin, I need you to be more aggressive on the defensive end. Hillis, keep doing what you're doing. And just plugging in with everyone and just say, hey, look, this is all about family effort. And then for me, it was never about, let me just come in and try and have a triple-double. Originally, I had aimed for that, and then I said, but these guys want it more than I do. They lost last year. We're going to get there, but it would be more important for them to be able to get that win. So fast forwarding after the that racial incident, I've been praying about it. I was going to Bible study at Collegedale with Pastor Moon, who has been a huge supporter, and just having conversations with him about race, and then feeling that I don't want to be the sole important person in any task that I do. And he said, just pray on it. And honestly, people know you. The people that do, they know that you're not this guy that comes out and wants to just embarrass people. So what you've been doing at Collegedale, for those that don't know, I play on Wednesday and Friday mornings. That stuff that you do with the kids, that's why they love you. Because you play, but you also help them become better. So you tell them, maybe do this move. Maybe if you help out here. And while you're playing, you're coaching, you don't even realize it because it's so natural. So I started doing it with these guys, and they responded. So by the time we get to the championship game, I'm looking at the crowd the entire time. And it wasn't because I was tired. I'm looking at my son, my wife, and Pastor Moon, who has come out to 2 games back-to-back. This guy, he knows that sports exists, but he's not a big supporter of competition because of the spirit of competition. It makes people ugly to the point where, as those who know, the good night won. And from what I understand, guys weren't too happy with the call because it was controversial. I'll be the first one to admit it was close. And if it was up to me, I'd say absolutely, let's go into overtime. I'll just say this. Us going into overtime, I think at that point, the tide had shifted. We had a couple tough plays, and we know how to grind things out because we've been there before. So my first thought was, I could end this game having the ball in my hands. I had taken it from LJ, and as soon as he gave me the ball, I'm looking at the time, and I was like, man, I probably should have just let him get the ball and let him do his thing because it's more important to those guys. So as I'm driving, I called for a screen. I probably should have went the other way, but I didn't because I'm looking around saying, I need to pass it to somebody so that this is more memorable to them. So as I shot the ball, which most people say, oh, you airballed the shot. It just happened to be the perfect pass.
Yeah.
And my eye was on Devin, who was playing in the middle of the zone, where he's looking. And I know that he was seeing if I was going to throw the ball for a steal. Mm-hmm. So I had to make it look like a shot, knowing that LJ and Durbin, who ends up making the game-winning shot, were right there. So I know that for a guy like Durbin, probably wouldn't have the opportunity to get that game-winning shot. Had that opportunity. That we put ourselves in the area for success. But then for us to realize that basketball, just like life, is a journey. My whole goal in life is to be able to teach that through the sport of basketball. If I would be able to coach for the rest of my life with being a teacher or even run my facility and being able to say to guys, look, if you prepare, you will be successful. And that's in anything that you do. Mm-hmm. If you understand yourself before understanding your surroundings, you'll be successful. Then when you understand your surroundings, how you can work with different people and how there might be some resistance or opposition, you're going to succeed. And you put all those things together in the game of basketball, it's just life in another form. So it was just very upsetting to me to know that I went through that spirit of competition, being upset that I didn't get the opportunity to go as far as I would have liked, given some different circumstances, but then also to see it in others where here's what I've been told is a place where they don't have collegiate sports, where we're not really supposed to be saying, well, we're going to beat you and it's all about me being better than you. And even hearing or even participating in saying some of the things to other people, it just made me realize how ugly competition can be. And you can read it in the Bible. There's so many different aspects that talks about competition where I believe it's, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, either Jacob.
I wouldn't know.
Or I want to say Jacob, but then I also want to say, oh man, his name, it just drew a blank. No, not Job. This is bad that I forget this. But either way, the gentleman, he was having these dreams that God was giving to him. And he would always tell his brothers, constantly tell his brothers.
Joseph.
I'm going to be Joseph, there it is. He had this dream that he was going to be ruling over his family. And depending on who you are and how you read it, it could be seen as, this is a guy that's very overzealous and he's bragging. How many times do we go through that and we're telling people our dreams, or we're boasting over our accomplishments and our success? So to see that manifest in others where after the game was over, granted, you know what, I've been on the other end, losing tough games, missing game winners, turning the ball over multiple times, and even to the point where there are games where I just was non-existent. But then to see that where here we are, we're supposed to be Christian or more Christian. And I'm not shouting out anybody because I know that I have a lot of work to do, but it's just to point out something simple as a simple game that is a competition of I need to be better than you because all I have to do is just score one more point than you, and that's the game. And here's a championship where, we got a T-shirt. Mr. Walker, I still haven't seen my T-shirt. I'll be coming to your office very soon.
Right.
But it was just it just knows that there are things like that exist, and then it just led me to believe that there's still more work to be done. It's not on a race thing. It's not on a denomination thing, because at the end of the day, we're all people. We were born in sin. So our best thing to do is to embrace what we are, where we are, and then let's move forward. And not just whether it's me and you, but me, you, and guy down the street. So if I have the opportunity to do something nice for you, absolutely will. I asked David Runnels. I had a pair of shoes in my closet that I never wore. He happens to have a size 14. Here you go. Ask Durbin Brown. I had a size 10.5 that I was supposed to return to get another size. Here. And he was on his last pair of sneakers. To me, to see the reaction on their faces, not for me to get the credit, but to see that I did something that made someone else feel good.
That's the best feeling. Honestly, there's like a thing in your mind actually where it's like that's how we do you believe I have a question because when I brought this up to my girl the other day, she looked at me like I'm crazy. I believe in natural selection and I believe in certain aspects. Like I believe that we have evolved as people. And even like the fact that you feel good because you gave something to somebody else is what helped us progress over other life forms. You know what I mean? For instance, when we lived in tribes, which we all did, we all are from Africa, we all lived in tribes and things like that. What helped us survive is the fact that we can share with each other and we had a communal background. That's what brought us forward. So over time, the brain shifted and allowed us to feel good when we help other people. Feel me?
Yeah.
That's something that happened over time. So the fact that the fact that so many people nowadays are selfish and they don't understand the happiness that you can get from just giving somebody a piece of, like giving somebody a shirt when they don't have a shirt. You know what I mean? Helping somebody, which might not be the best decision for you because you could have returned those sneakers and you would have had more sneakers, you know?
So,
but that wouldn't have helped you that wouldn't have given you the same feeling as just helping somebody in that moment.
and unfortunately, for some people, it comes from, I'm going to give out of excess. So unfortunately for me, when I look at my closet, I can say, all right, I'm going to wear those on Monday. I'm going to wear those on Tuesday. Man, I see that box. I remember I got those, but I don't want to wear those until they're warm. Yeah, I did give out of excess. And it reminded me that every time I go in my closet and I go to put on whatever it is that I'm going to wear, and for the most part, Monday through Thursday, I dress like this. Shirt, tie, if I can, suit, tie, because it's a look of success and it lets the kids know that I'm taking my profession serious. Where a lot of kids, they go through school and they don't think, well, my teacher's a bum. You know, he's wearing jeans and maybe a polo or whatever the case may be. He's not taking his job serious. But to be able to dress as if what's considered success in a suit, that gives a different connotation to the position. So imagine if you went to McDonald's and you're seeing a guy that you put the order in, he has a shirt and a tie on. All of a sudden, you give him a different kind of respect. You may think that he's making money somewhere else, but you also have a different look for someone of that profession. So I think it's important that we're able to, again, change our narrative and we're able to give when we can. My wife tells me that all the time. You know, one of the greatest stewardships is being able to give. So the way that we've gotten by is by our neighbors. They've been able to say, hey, look, we have these old clothes from our son. He's 3 years old. Here you go. So unless I want to go shopping for my son and make sure that he looks way better than I do, he has enough clothes until he's about 2 years old.
Really?
We just got another donation where I was thinking, money-wise, how are we going to be able to do this with our daughter? We just picked up from, I believe it was a secretary on campus, had a lot of clothes for girls. Pretty much can pass as brand new.
One.
We still have, I kid you not, since my son has been born, we might have bought 2 boxes of diapers. And he's in size 3 going to size 4. But that community aspect of giving, that's where that comes from. So to be able to say, hey, neighbor, I know you're struggling, so here's a couple dollars so you guys can buy groceries. I know you have your family coming in, and this is a real life story. I just don't want to say their names, but I know you have family coming in, so here's some money so that you guys can go grocery shopping while we're up in New York for Christmas. Things like those, they go a long way, and then they end up passing it on to someone else, and then they go on passing it to someone else. And when you think about when you're well off, right, you have enough that you can get by compared to the times where you might be struggling, which one's more rewarding? For those that prefer wealth over happiness, might say the money brings me happiness. But I hear so many stories of people saying, well, I remember when I had my last dollar and someone gave me money, or somebody invited me over for dinner. Someone gave me this whatever outfit. And I've been there where I'm living in a 1-bedroom apartment and I don't know how I'm going to make it to make my rent. And guy that I know works the same job is giving me a ride every day because I couldn't afford the train because I was saving up to get out of there to get a car. One of the guys that I live with just said, hey, look, I got all these clothes that are big. If you want it, cool. It just happened to be my size. Now I don't have to go wardrobe shopping because my entire closet has changed. So for someone to do that for me, my first instinct is I should be doing that for someone else.
Of course.
Which would lead me to say to guys that I've played with, hey, and I'm going to be talking to you guys, Mark, LJ, David, Durbin, get ready. Any old clothing that you have, whether it be athletic, shorts, shirts, sneakers, whatever. Let's just put it all in a bag and see if we can give it to some people downtown. I would love to be able to speak to Black Christian Union, the Latin Student Government, and ask them, well, community service, do you guys do that? And if so, I have a perfect school that you guys can come to. One school that's 60% Latino, another school where it has Black community, but to be able to spend your time with those guys and hear their stories. Because a lot of them, just by you showing up in a shirt and a tie or even dressed as they dress and speak their language, that's going to go a lot for them. Even though they might be 12, 13, 14 years old, they're looking for someone that speaks their language, that is going through some of the struggles that they have. And for any of these other minorities, find someone that looks like you and then find someone that doesn't look like you and be able to pass on a word, a gesture. Because at the end of the day, we can only get better by helping one another. We're never going to get anywhere if we're only taking care of our own. And that's something that was presented as a challenge in Black Panther at first. We're only going to take care of Wakanda, right? We're only going to take care of our own,
That's a good
our
point.
own people. And it took to, and it, as crazy as it sounds, I don't care what any man will say. Every man says a woman makes them better.
Of course.
And it took T'Challa's ex-girlfriend to say, look, I want to go and do my ministry elsewhere because there's too many people that are outside of Wakanda that need our help and they could use our resources. And it took him fighting against his own cousin who had the same belief, even though he was more militant. And a lot of people say Malcolm versus Martin. But to have that in your mind in a positive way and say, there are more than just Black people that need help. You know, there are Spanish people, there are white people, there are Asian people. They're just people in general because God's not going to come down and save just one person. He's going to come down and save those that believed in him, that demonstrated the best that they could of being a kind person to their neighbor and overall just wanting to be better in their community. So for me, I would just want to challenge everyone. What can you do for your community? What can you do for your fellow man?
Well, on that note, Mike, it was a pleasure having you, man. Definitely one of the more positive interviews that I've had. You know, sometimes we'd be up here talking foolishness. Sometimes, like with Grady, we talk political. But this is an interview where we talked, a podcast episode, where we talked about ways to uplift each other, ways to make our community better. And for the young people who listen to this, this is just an older man giving you game, telling you what's up. Mike, appreciate it, man. We should do it again sometime, bro. Definitely.
Anytime, man. I appreciate you having me.
Of course. All right, signing out.
Supreme calling us. 20 came on the track. Light skin, skinny bitch. Pull up with the big tits. Niggas took a stank. Suck a dick to your shitty lips. Light skin, skinny bitch. Pull up with the big tits. Niggas took a stank. Suck a dick to your shitty lips. Gotta get the grip. Gotta get the stick shift. On a spaceship. Fuck, I live, bitch. We tryna get on. 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 She tryna pull up, cause my knot's too big. I told her pull up, she could get this dick. She deep throat pro cola ostrich dick. Her plotting on the bread, kicked her out, she sick. The Supreme call, young swaggy motherfucker. Bitches out here tryna fuck without a rubber. Fuck the one time asking me if I love her. straight up her. Find another swaggy nigga like me. Impossible. Fucking 3 hoes, pass them all 3 ways. Do it next week. Definition of a replay. Spitting all his heat, I might fucking cause a heat wave. Skinny bitch, pull up with the big tits. Niggas took a stack, suck a dick to get shitty lips. Yeah, gotta get the grip, gotta get a stick shift. On a spaceship, fuck a lift bitch. Yeah. We tryna get on, we tryna get on, we tryna get on, motherfucker. We tryna get on, we tryna get on, we tryna get on, motherfucker. What we gonna do? Course a wave. Have these corny motherfuckers hating for days. What we gonna do? Cause a wave. Have these corny motherfuckers hating for days. Let's get it. Stack all your paper to the ceiling like a bank. Defecate on niggas like your shit don't stink. Ball so hard, D boogie in the paint. From Civics to the Raris, looking scurry, don't you think? This Supreme car, boogie down is where I stay. We stacking paper, frontin', now she sucking later, fucking later. Made the pussy like a crater. Love my haters, love your haters. Don't fuck with perpetrators, only fuck with perpet papers. Keep the splits in rotation, bad bitches circulating, send the nation. We the greatest, turn up like we Super Saiyans. We light skinny bitch, gone, pull up with the big tits. Niggas took a stack, course away. Suck a dick to get shitty lips, course away. Gotta get the grip, course away. Gotta get a stick shift, course away. On a spaceship, course away. Fuck a lift bitch, course away.
All I wanna do is shine. Trying to make my spot in this world. All I wanna do is shine. It's shine, it's shine, it's shine. It's shine, it's shine, it's shine.
Yeah. Only Cam on the track.
Yeah.
Yo. Your boy shine bright like stadium lights. You want some phenomenal? Pass us the mics. We gon' make the earth shake. Get my number 3 mics. Sold out shows, I ain't even got a price. But we can't brag, gotta stay humble. We look down, then we gon' tumble.